Greetings everyone. Here I am again, and in this module is the second part of implementing the Recrogrid Framework's authorization system, where I will set permissions. In the previous part, we initialized the Recrosic module, set up the Microsoft Entra ID registered apps for the client and API, and configured an administrator and 3 other users. Here we have Robert King, who has the RGF users role. Robert can log into the application, but currently he doesn't have any permissions. Now, I will configure it so that users with the RGF users role can view the product entity. Permissions can be set in the Recrosic administration interface. I am currently logged in with David in this browser because he is the administrator. The top table shows logical objects that control access to different objects or entities. In the middle are the permissions themselves, and at the bottom are the roles, users, and special permissions. I will come back to their structure and relationship later, but first, let's do a simple example where Robert can view products. I'll add a new object permission, which will be for the product. It's possible to specify which permission each entity uses. If not defined, Recrosic will select based on the entity's name. I'll add that product can use the read permission. This needs to be selected from the permission group. Besides the usual CRUD rights, other permissions can be defined within the group, such as export. Custom permissions can also be defined in the group. For example, in an accounting system, they could define an invoice cancellation right. But for now, I only need read. I enable the read permission for the RGF users role. Let's try it out. I'm logged in with Robert in this window. He now sees the product menu item, and it's evident he only has reading rights. If I open the form view, he can see the data but cannot modify it. I'll log in with Andrew as well. And since he also has the RGF users role, he will have the same rights. He doesn't have access to order details, so he can't see that. He also doesn't have access to categories. I could manually add permissions for every entity here, but there's a slightly more sophisticated method. I'll demonstrate that soon, but first, I'll delete these settings. Let's take a look at the database structure and consider what we want. I've created a simple but somewhat structured access plan for these tables. The model is shown in this diagram. As Dr. Braun would say, please excuse the crudity of this model. I didn't have time to build it to scale or paint it, but I hope it serves the purpose. I'm going to create 3 access groups, and the entities belonging to these groups will have the same access rights. For example, the organization data group includes region, territories, shippers, employees, and employee territories. I'll add these first. I select these entities in the entity list. Using the Initialize Recrosic option in the Additional Functions menu, I'll initialize them. The permission name will be organization data. Now let's go back to the Recrosic page and see what happened. It generated permission groups for us and associated them with object permissions, and of course, with the entities. These are the permissions. I'll do the same with the others. Categories, product, and suppliers go into procurement data. Customers, orders, and order details go into sales data. Now all entities have available permissions. Next, I'll define roles for these permission groups. The 3 roles I'm going to create are shown in this diagram, and the matrix shows what access each role will have to the data types. Management will have full access to all data types, while the other 2 will only have editing rights for their respective groups and only reading rights for the rest. Now I'll create the roles in RGF Identity. Management, Sales, Procurement. Now I'll assign the roles to the users. Andrew will be in Management. Nancy in Sales. And Robert in Procurement. The Recrosic page also shows which users are in which role. Now, according to the previous diagram, I'll assign permissions to the roles. Management will have full access to all data types. For procurement, organization data, read. Procurement data, create read update. Sales data, read. For sales, organization data, read. Sales data, create read update. Procurement data, read. Let's pause for a moment at this point. I assume by now everyone has figured out why there are 3 tables. The permission groups contain the permissions themselves. These are assigned to different objects, so the permissions available to objects are not dependent on users or their permissions. Recrosic knows what access is possible to an object. If the requested access is available, it will only then check whether the user or role has that access. There's one more important thing. Currently, I'm using the built-in identity module in RGF. This is not mandatory. Users and roles can be in another system, such as Active Directory or some custom external solution. That's why the roles and users list at the bottom left is just a view. which now references RGF identity in the database. Everything is set up. Let's try it out. I'm logged in with Andrew in this window. He's in management, and he has access to everything. The buttons are visible. He can access everything, edit and delete. Let's look at another entity. He can access everything here too. I'll open a new window and log in with Nancy here. Nancy is in sales and cannot edit employee. Nor can she access product. However, she can access order. She can create and edit, but not delete. And finally, let's see with Robert. Robert is in procurement. He can edit product. However, he cannot edit order. He also has access to employee, but he cannot edit it. He only has read permission for it. In conclusion, based on what we've seen, let's summarize what you can do now. You can initialize the Recrosic module in a Recrogrid framework supported application. You can use an OIDC provider to authenticate users into the client application. You can create roles that can be assigned to users. You can create permission groups that can be assigned to entities and roles. And all this without writing a single line of code. But Recrosic doesn't stop there. Different permissions can be accessed at the code level. There are more complex scenarios in parameterization. Object permissions can inherit settings hierarchically from each other. With inheritable permissions, you can prioritize or override permissions. You can define not only permissions but also denials. You can associate permissions with an entity based on a specific record or data of the record. You can intervene in the evaluation process at the code level or through stored procedures stored in the database. Next time, we'll examine these as well. In the continuation, see how to export and import Recrosic settings. Click on the video. Thank you for your attention.